Whoever thought that on the blood-red sands of Mars, one of the top sports is a tame version of Gaslands, and that people would be drinking fresh, clean water instead of the blood of their enemies? Who knew? Greetings and welcome to Checkpoint Gaming. With a short series of episodes, we will be going over how to play the game Gaslands Martian Racing Federation. With Gaslands Martian Racing Federation, which will be referring to simply as the Martian Racing Federation, was created by Mike Hutchinson and published through the magazine Blaster Volume 1. With the Martian Racing Federation, it is a spin-off game of Gaslands Refueled where people are able to engage in a series of races upon the red sands of Mars using high-speed anti-gravity or anti-grav racers. And unlike the disorganized and ramshackle competitions that are found on Earth, the races found on Mars are organized and highly regulated in order to protect the interests of not only the sponsors but also the owners of the teams. To help achieve this, the vehicles are properly maintained due to them being high-tech, high-spec, and exquisitely expensive. If people want to see blood, guts, and gore, then they can always just flip the channel to watch the Savage Barbarians race down on Earth. In addition to this, drivers are seasoned professionals who live the life of luxury and excess. This is due to the fact that grav racing is a beloved sport to the people of Mars. Even though the Martian Racing Federation uses the same movement templates that are found in Gaslands, this game is essentially a standalone game with its own set of rules. The barrier of entry for you to play the Martian Racing Federation is low. What you need would be a copy of Blaster Volume 1, some toy cars, templates, data sheets, and a play area. The most expensive item will be the copy of Blaster Volume 1, which can be obtained online. With Blaster Volume 1, it possesses all the necessary information for you to play the game. Even though it is a good idea to familiarize yourself with the rules, keep the magazine handy. That way, you can easily turn to it for any needed reference or clarification during the game. With the differences that are found between Gaslands Refueled and the Martian Racing Federation, they consist of the following changes. First, the game does not possess any gears or gear phases. Instead, each player will take turns activating their vehicle. With this vehicle activation, it is done through a long snaking of templates placed onto the play area. Second, there are no hazard tokens. Instead, when a vehicle would take a hazard within a typical Gaslands game, the vehicle in the Martian Racing Federation will take G tokens instead. In addition to this, do not use skid dice in this mode of the game. Instead, when it comes time to activate your planned out movement choices, gain G tokens as a result of executing your movements. Third, replace the wipeout step with the loss of consciousness. With the loss of consciousness, it is due to the G-forces that the racers experience due to the race. The loss of consciousness should not be all that surprising since these vehicles are capable of moving extremely fast. Fourth, there is not any shooting that occurs this iteration of the game. In addition to this, instead of suffering damage from collisions, they face the possibility of losing control. With this loss of control, it represents a more deadly penalty for the driver due to the split-second decision-making that is required in this game of high-G anti-gravity racing. In regards to the rules, relying upon Blaster Volume 1 accompanied by its errata, its frequently asked questions, and any other documentation that has been laid out by the publishers of the game. With the rounds that are found within the game, they are structured differently than that of Gaslands Refueled. In regards to each round, it is divided into 3 distinct phases. For these phases, they consist of the planning phase, activation phase, and the geolock phase. With each game round, it begins with the planning phase. In the planning phase, each player will secretly note their movement activations for each of their vehicles. With the recording of these actions, they are to be in the order that these activations will be taken in. From there, the players will take turns activating their vehicles during the activation phase. This will start with the player who is found in pole position. When a vehicle activates during the activation phase, it will resolve all of its noted movement activations at once in the order that they were noted. It will then discard all of its G tokens. From there, play will pass on to another player. It is worth noting that skid dice are never used. Once all vehicles have been activated once in the activation phase, the geolock phase will occur. In the geolock phase, players will take turns spending each other's geolock tokens, starting with the player in pole position. This will last until all of the players have finished spending the geolock tokens. Once this has been completed, the players will begin a new round. During the planning phase, players will have to secretly write down between 1 and 6 different movement actions in a fixed order for each of their vehicles. With each movement action, it may consist of any of the 9 movement templates, a spin, or a slide. With every noted movement action, it has to be distinct in relation to the other noted movement actions for that given vehicle. For example, a player cannot note a long straight twice for a single vehicle during the planning phase. To assist players in achieving this, a set of movement action cards have been produced. Players have the option of writing down their planned movement actions on a piece of paper or to use the Martian Racing Federation movement cards. When a vehicle activates in the activation phase, it must select and resolve all of the noted movement actions that have been noted. At the end of the vehicle's activation, discard all of the G tokens from that vehicle. During the vehicle's activation, the movement templates must be placed so that they connect to one another end-to-end to form one continuous path. When moving the vehicle, do not move it to the end of each template before placing the next template. Players will only place the vehicle at the end of a template when it is the final template and they need to determine the vehicle's final position. The exception to this is when resolving a slide. With a movement action is where the player places a single movement template to resolve a spin or a slide. Each movement action is considered resolved once the next movement action begins. What this means is that the placement of each template will lock the previous template in place and the players cannot take back and plan their route if they encounter a problem with the later template. After each movement action, a collision window occurs. With the vehicle's max G value, it is the maximum number of G tokens the vehicle can safely possess. Depending upon the planned movement action, the active vehicle may be forced to gain or choose to discard G tokens. At the end of the vehicle's activation, discard all the G tokens found on that vehicle. In the extreme conditions of a grav race, the high levels of acceleration that is experienced by the grav racer pilot can cause them to temporarily lose consciousness. This is known as G-lock in the racing circles. If the completion of a movement action or collision will cause the active vehicle to have G tokens that is greater than the vehicle's max G value, then the vehicle will immediately go into G-lock as represented by gaining a G-lock token followed by ending their activation after resolving any collisions that occur. A vehicle can also have any number of G-lock tokens on it. With some movement actions found in the game, they are considered to be high G, requiring the active vehicle to gain a number of G tokens before it can successfully resolve an action. This is reflected in the movement action G tokens table. With some less risky movement actions, they are considered low G and allows the active vehicle to discard G token. After resolving a low G movement action, the active vehicle may discard a number of G tokens. This is reflected in the movement action G tokens table. After resolving a low G action, discarding of G tokens is an optional action. When a vehicle possesses 0 G tokens, it is allowed to perform a low G action. With the movement action G tokens table, it consists of the following. With 3 G-force tokens, the player may perform a long straight and a medium straight maneuver. With 2 G-force tokens, the player may perform a gentle and a spin maneuver. With 1 G-force token, the player may perform a short straight, veer, and slide maneuver. With a -1 G-force token, the player may perform a turn and a hard maneuver. With -2 G-force tokens, the player may perform a swerve and a hairpin maneuver. When a player plans a spin, it must be planned to be the final movement action for it to occur. When a vehicle resolves a spin action, the vehicle may be rotated up to 90 degrees in either direction. When pivoting, it must be done about its center axis. When the player resolves a slide action, the slide template must be connected to the movement template that was resolved immediately before the slide action occurred. If the slide is selected as the first movement action in activation, then ignore it and treat it as if it wasn't played. Once the slide template has been placed, then place the vehicle into the slide final position, followed by resolving the movement actions from that point onward, placing the next movement template in front of the vehicle's new position. When it comes to push it, once per round, the vehicle may gain 1 G-lock token to increase its maximum G value by 2 for the rest of the activation. When it comes to air brakes and the placement of a movement template for an active vehicle, the vehicle will gain 1 additional G token in order to place the template such that the vehicle will move in reverse. If the first template is placed in reverse, place the template touching the rear edge of the vehicle. Otherwise, place it touching the far end of the previous template. It is worth noting that this may cause the movement templates to overlap. If this occurs, don't worry, it's fine. With collision windows, they occur after each movement action. When a collision window occurs, ignore the normal Gaslands collision rules and follow the following steps instead. First, the active vehicle will gain 1 G token. Second, if the active vehicle still has planned movement actions to resolve, then it will gain 1 additional G token. Third, if the collision is with another vehicle, then the inactive vehicle will gain 1 G-lock token. Fourth, if the collision is with a piece of terrain, then the active vehicle will gain 1 G-lock token. Unless the additional G tokens cause the active vehicle's activation to end, then the collision window will not terminate the vehicle's movement. After resolving the collision, ignore the obstruction and continue placing the planned templates to find the vehicle's final position. When in the G-lock phase, beginning with the player with pole position, the players will take turns to nominate one of their vehicles to take the gray out action in order to spend the G-lock tokens on their opponent's vehicles so they can choose to pass. If all the players pass sequentially, the round will end and the players will begin a new game round. With gray out, once per round during the G-Lock phase, this vehicle may select a target enemy vehicle with one or more G-Lock tokens. This vehicle may spend up to 3 G-Lock tokens from the target to select and place a movement template for the target vehicle. With the target vehicle, it must immediately make a forced movement forward using the selected and placed template. With the cost of selecting and placing each template, they consist of the following. For 3 G-Force tokens, the player can select the hard, swerve, and the hairpin maneuvers. For 2 G-Force tokens, the player can select the long straight, veer, turn, and spin maneuvers. For 1 G-Lock token, the player can select the medium straight, short straight, and gentle maneuvers. With that taken care of, we can move on to the Martian Racing Season. With the Martian Racing Season, it is a series of games that are linked together in a campaign. When building a team, each player will have 40 million credits available to spend in its construction. At the end of each game, the winner will receive 10 championship points, accompanied by each team receiving an additional 3 million credits to spend on perks before entering into the next game. It is also possible for these credits to be banked from game to game. When playing a season, decide if you will be playing to either a set number of championship points or to a set number of games. At the end of the campaign, the team that has obtained the most championship points will be deemed the campaign winner. For the season, it consists of 2 scenarios, Martian Speedway and Canyon Run. With both scenarios, they possess the special rule of serious business where players are not allowed to use audience votes during the scenario. With Martian Speedway, it is basically just a death race scenario from Gaslands Refueled, except it occurs upon the sands of the Martian desert instead of the ruins of Earth. This means that vehicle deployment, pole position, race gates, game end, and victory rules are exactly the same as the death race scenario. If you are not familiar with the death race scenario, then check out episode 3 of Checkpoint Gaming Gaslands. And given the speed of the grav racers, players may agree to race more than 1 lap in this scenario. With the setup of the scenario, lay out some terrain to represent the red deserts of Mars, followed by laying out a racetrack with 3 or 4 gates found upon the tabletop. With the distances found between each gate, make them longer than normal. Players may also choose to use a larger than normal play area. With Canyon Run, it should be played upon a table area that is approximately 4 feet squared. From there, nominate one table edge as the entry edge, and the opposite table edge will become the exit edge. Once that has been determined, the players will roll off in order to determine pole position. At the start of each game round, after the first one, pass the pole position marker in a clockwise manner. From there, have a single spawn point marker placed into the center of the entry edge. Beginning with the player in pole position, players will take turns deploying all of their vehicles within long range of the spawn point, measuring like a shooting attack and touching the entry edge. Once deployment has been completed, the player in pole position will place a single piece of terrain according to the following rules. When asked to place a piece of terrain, the player will roll 1d6. This will determine the size of the terrain piece that is going to be placed touching any point found along the exit edge. On a roll of 1, 2, 3, or 4, a small piece of terrain will be placed. On a roll of 5 or 6, a large piece of terrain will be placed. When placing a terrain piece, it may be placed anywhere the player wishes as long as it is in contact with the exit edge as well as being at least short range from any other piece of terrain. It may also be oriented however the player desires as long as at least one piece of it is connected with the exit edge. The players should agree amongst themselves what pieces within their terrain collection should count as being large and which count as being small. And if a vehicle collides with a piece of terrain, the vehicle will immediately be disqualified. At the end of each round, complete the following 3 steps. First, push each vehicle and terrain piece 18 centimeters or long straight towards the entry edge. Second, beginning with the player in pole position, the players will take turns placing a single piece of terrain until the total number of terrain pieces is equal to the current round number having been placed. And third, repeat the previous 2 steps. At the end of this process, the player should have placed terrain pieces that is equal to 3 times the current round, each time placing a number of terrain pieces equal to the round number. When pushing a vehicle or terrain piece in this manner, it will have to end as close as possible to the entry edge while retaining its initial orientation. Start with moving the objects that are closest to the entry edge. If this causes a vehicle to touch or to be moved off of the entry edge, then that vehicle will be disqualified. In this way, the whole table acts like a giant conveyor belt, revealing more terrain up ahead and dumping slow-moving vehicles out of the race. When measuring this movement, make sure to measure from and to the same point on the object as compared to placing it at the far end of the template. Otherwise, this will cause the larger objects to move faster than the slower objects. As soon as the vehicle's final position or movement template touches or overlaps the exit edge, the game will come to an end and the player controlling said vehicle will be deemed the winner. So with that said, that is what you need to know about the basic gameplay for the Martian Racing Federation. If you like this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes that we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.